Tall Girl Tuesday podcast. I am your host. No, I'm just playing.
Welcome to the Tall Girl Tuesday podcast. It's your girl, Danie. And on this week's episode, I have a very special guest, Mr. Dennis McKesey.
Well, it's an honor to be here, Danie. I know you and I have got an opportunity to at least speak virtually. We spoke via text as well as phone. And, I'm really impressed with the work that you're doing. Really impressed. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm impressed with the work that you're doing. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and get into it. So explain to the people who you are and about Off School Grounds Coalition.
Yes, I'm Dennis McKesey. I've been in education almost 30 years. I started off as a school aide, then became a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal of a well-known charter school in Harlem, Promise Academy Charter School. And then since then, almost 10 years now, I've been a leadership development coach for principals and school leaders across the country. So I've had the opportunity to mentor and coach hundreds of principals. And that kind of led me to Off School Grounds.
Okay.
And so one of the things I know just in conversation is that the idea of who a principal is always what people see on school grounds. And I felt like there's so much more to a principal, so much more to who they are. And one of the things I felt I needed to do is to expose the world to principals all off school grounds. So during the pandemic, I decided that it was an appropriate time to bring all my principals together from all across the country together in a Zoom room, and allow one for them to meet one another, two to create a safe space where they can actually allow themselves to be themselves, and then lastly, to give them an opportunity to not only meet one another, but to meet other people, such as celebrities, athletes, elected officials, and other things who admire the work that they're doing. So that's a little bit about Off School Grounds.
That's dope. You said 30 years, so I'm just doing the math in my head like, you must be a little bit up there in age. Okay.
Yeah, I age well.
You look very young.
I started teaching when I was 4. So yeah. But it's funny, when I tell people this story, I learned early what I wanted to be in life, and I wanted to be successful. And something prompted me at the age of 17 to do so. I became a dad when I was 17 years old.
Okay.
My first son, Michael, who's now, matter of fact, just past Wednesday, he actually made 30 years. So he's 30
Happy
years
birthday.
old. Yeah, Mikey is my guy. And so from early, I didn't really have the distractions that many other people had because, I took full responsibility of being, father to Mikey from early. So it didn't take long for me to recognize why I needed to be serious about a career. Like I didn't want to just have a job. I wanted to create a career. I wanted to create generational wealth. I wanted to do so many other things and be an example for my son. So starting at the age of 17 is when I really understood the importance of, making a difference, but at the same time recognizing that it is my responsibility to be a trailblazer and a trendsetter for my son and my family.
Oh, wow, that's dope. So did you grow up with like educators in the home, or like were you kind of the first one to?
Yeah, I was the first one. I didn't really have educators in my family. My mom is from Central America, Belize. My father's from Jamaica, and the emphasis on education was always there. But I took a genuine love for education primarily because of my schooling. I remember, I didn't really have as many bad experiences as so many other people have when it comes to talking about public education. I can remember pretty much all my teachers from kindergarten. So kindergarten, Miss Valentine, first grade. I don't remember first grade teacher. Second grade, Miss Aurea. Third grade, Miss Shannon. So the list goes on and on.
Wow.
I can remember them, and believe it or not, the impact that they made on my life at that point. I didn't realize that it was grooming me to become an educator. But one thing I did know for certain is I enjoyed school. I enjoyed my teachers. I honestly felt that going to work as an educator was something that was achievable for me. But at that point, I still didn't know what I wanted to do in life. But clearly, my experiences when I was young allowed me to see the possibilities as this being one of the possibilities.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I feel like my story's the complete opposite because I did like school, but I didn't have anybody. Now, I can't remember any of my teachers' names, maybe but one or two. We're talking about throughout the entire K through 12.
Wow.
So even that's something that I think about when I'm in these meetings with you guys and listening to you guys. And it's like, I wish I had this opportunity or, educators who cared when I was in school.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important for us to understand the other aspect of off school grounds, OSG, is that we want young people to see this as a viable option for them too. And that, wearing, varsity jackets and hoodies and hats and being dope, I want young people to recognize that this is a possibility for them as well. So that's the part that, over the years I've heard many stories similar to yours, and the part that always stuck with me was, if you genuinely respected education and educators when you were young, there's a strong likelihood that you could possibly be one. And I just knew now that young people they're very visual. They want to be what they could see. And so if you're going to be a principal, you might not want to dress or look like the ones that they don't want to be like. Mm-hmm. So I can walk down the street right now and nobody would ever know, based on my attire, no one would have ever known that I've had almost 30 years of experience and I ran successful schools in New York City for as long as I have, and that I actually now run a few businesses and a not-for-profit myself. But again, that's all cool with me, as long as people can understand that at any given time I can stand before anybody and have a conversation when it relates to education and what's best for children. So I definitely want the message to get out that principals and educators as a whole are generally dope individuals.
Absolutely.
And we don't have to be corny, and we not, and so, we here in Newark, in Newark right now at Westside High with one of the coolest principals on the planet, Akbar Cook. So you clearly know what we talking about when we talk about dopeness.
Absolutely. Shout out to Cook. And speaking of attire, he's definitely decked out today.
Yeah. Yo, for real? Like, it's hot, and I got my OSG varsity jacket on and stuff like that, but
it's fly.
Thank you. So, now, you know what? I'm gonna leave it on for the interview if you don't mind, right?
Please.
I brought you a hoodie as well, and I don't want to mess up your bun, so I'll make sure to pass that over to you before we leave today. But thank you again for having me. And
Thank you.
I when I wear this, whether it's this varsity jacket, the hoodies, whether the hats, the OSG mask, whatever it is, I do so with pride and understanding that it's. Everybody wants to create a brand. Everybody wants to create a logo. But when you create a symbol of excellence, it's a different story. And
Wow.
Everybody who I know who wears those three letters on anything that they wear, I can honestly say that it's a sense of pride for them as well. And so
Absolutely.
I'm always happy to see people in their OSG attire. You've been on it. You've been on the meetups with us on
Yes.
Thursday. You get a chance to see people like Dane Dash rock his OSG gear all week. You get an opportunity to see other celebrities wear it, like my brother Luna Man, who just came home not long ago, who wears his OSG with pride as well. But again, it's just the ordinary person who looks at it and say, "Yo, I just want to know. I want to know more about that crew." So
Who are they and how can I be a part of it?
absolutely.
Absolutely. So what does it mean for you to have been able to bring together so many amazing educators and principals in a safe space to provide the services that you guys provide and to, talk about the things that matter, which are the children and
Well, I guess
things like that?
I guess what may be relatable to people is thinking about like the Wu-Tang Clan
Okay.
and how the RZA brought all of them together to create such a dope crew. Or you think about Rockefeller and what Dame did by bringing in all of those amazing talents. Or you think about Bad Boy and bringing those amazing talents together. You got to say to yourself, you got to believe in the people that you're bringing to the crew. And me having years and years and years of experience with these people, I know the type of people they are. I know how genuine they are about children. I know how genuine they are about education. So it was pretty easy. It was an easy and organic way to bring them all together. They were extremely dope. OSG, again, represents, what all the good that comes with education. So when I hear people speak of the ills of education, I get a bit defensive about it, because I know that there are a group of people, and now you know them as well, that are out here working extremely hard to make sure that young people in communities that are marginalized and underrepresented in this country are actually getting nothing but quality education. So, bringing them together was easy.
Okay.
Bringing them together was easy. What I'm most impressed with is that the building of the relationships and the bonds right before me, to see how many people are actually, consider each other brothers and sisters now, and how we can even look at one another and say, you know what, let's just hang out for a little bit, whether it's on a Zoom or in person. Those things mean the world to me. Is to be able to see people who've never met each other before. They did it on a Zoom, have the same love for each other when they meet each other in person and they did in that Zoom. So bringing them together was, I think, simple. Keeping them together is what's most impressive to me.
Okay. A lot of networking is going on.
No doubt.
And so for me, so when I first came into a meeting, an OSG meeting, and I said, I have to find out, I was invited here, so what is my place in here, And for most of my experience in terms of work is in behavioral health. So being in that field, one thing that we always strive to do is to meet people where they are. That's the type of services that we provide for, whether it's working with the children or the adults with, behavioral health and mental health diagnoses. So when I came in and I'm listening to the principals and educators and you and everybody talking, I'm like, this is what it is, because you guys have found a way to meet people where they are and provide the services for them and wrap them with services around that. And I said, okay, this is dope. Like,
But what you got to think about is, why I think what makes this crew so unique is that it's not only exclusive to educators, right?
I'm not an educator.
Exactly. We have medical physicians, we have therapists, we have elected officials, we have mayors, we have other people that join us on an ongoing and regular basis. And so ideally, children become the nucleus of what we do. And so whether you're in the medical field or in education, whether you're, an attorney, our job is to try to create an environment where young people have an opportunity to thrive and to be great. And so being able to sit in a room, or Zoom conference with prominent educators like this, you don't feel stuffy. You don't feel like you don't belong. After a while, you're like, yo, you know what? I can contribute to this conversation, because we understand what it's about. It's not about who's in the room. It's that, yo, I just feel good about being here with these people. You know what I'm saying? So I think what I'm most impressed with, again, when a person like yourself can come into the room as a non-educator and say, yo, I love this. I'm coming every Thursday. And then on top of that, I need to interview the CEO for a minute. I need to really pick his brain. So I'm glad to have this opportunity. But I guess let me kind of flip the interview a little bit on you. And tell me a little bit about your experience. Like, I know you've been there for at least a month. You got a chance to see it. And I personally, when I'm in that element, I don't necessarily get to see and hear everything that everybody else is thinking or saying, because I'm in that zone. But what's always important to me is to hear about what OSG means to another person. What does it mean to the guests who come and never leave? Like, what does it mean to you?
Okay. So for me, one of the main things from the beginning was the fact that I'm a disaster response crisis counselor through FEMA. So that's one thing a lot of people don't know about me, but it's something that is near and dear to me. Like, and it's all volunteer. That's not even something I get paid to do. So when the pandemic hit, so let me let you know first, I've been in OSG since June. So I've been here a while. It's been more than a month. So when the pandemic hit, I'm like, okay, this is when I have to put I have to put my knowledge to use. Like they're going to be calling me for my services. So when I came into OSG and knowing that the people that I talk to throughout the day for the volunteer work, the main thing that they need are services. And for me, I'm in Jersey, and so I'm servicing families in the Essex County area. And so I could just say I can get a phone call from a mother who's looking to find a way to feed their kid. You know, the pandemic hit, I lost my job, I lost my resources, I'm struggling, I need food for my family. Oh, well, in OSG, we was just talking about Lights On program, send them to West Side, you know? So I'm picking up all of these things that are helping me to help other people too. And I have to say, every single time I'm in there, I'm a note taker. I take notes of who's the guest for the week, what was being said. I'm that girl, I'm the note taker. And I always find myself so like fulfilled and like emotional when I leave that meeting, because it's like, all right, I'm not doing enough. Number one, I always like, I'm not doing enough. I could be doing more. And then it's more like not complaining about the small stuff, because I'm still working on my degrees and my education. My story is a lot different from a lot of people's. So I'll hear like someone say, oh, they're working on their doctorate, and I'm just like, I'm in this room full of educators and principals, and there's no reason for me to complain about a paper that's due.
Absolutely.
Because all of them have already done it. And it's like, just get it done. What you complaining for?
Well, I'm gonna let you in on that. In addition to running, you know, a few companies, the non-for-profit, still coaching and mentoring principals, I'm also a little less than a year away from receiving my doctorate. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, if anything, hopefully that can continue to inspire you. That you know, people ask me all the time, like, how do you balance all this? Like, how are you able to do all of those things successfully? And I say, to believe it or not, is I try to stay, you know, it sounds cliche, but I try to stay in the present. You know what I'm saying? I do things hour by hour versus let me worry about what I'm gonna do next week. It overwhelmed me, right? And so even with my doctoral work, I have specific days that I focus on that work. I don't try to do it any other day because it won't get done. Because I recognize that all those other days have other things that require my attention. So for you, it's just important to recognize that if you really don't have an excuse, right?
Not
you know what I'm
at all.
saying? And I'm raising kids. I have a wife, I have a family. I have other things that are going on as well. And in no instance are any of those things going lack because of all the things that I'm doing. These are all things that I choose to do. And these are all things that I think God has ordained me to do. So I'm never going to be worried about whether or not I can actually carry out the functions. It's just me saying that anxiety happens as a result of people thinking too far ahead.
Wow.
You can plan ahead, but you ain't got to put your mind to thinking about what I'm going to do next week. Like next week, as we can see by way of this pandemic, things change every minute.
Absolutely.
So you trying to plan for a month in advance or a week in advance, trust me, it's going to change at least 4 times before the time you get to that day. So just, stay focused on that, D.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you actually answered one of the questions I had for you, which was like, how do you balance it all? Because I see you even on the meetings, and it's just like you are so connected to everyone. What's that called? The nucleus?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, again, people say it all the time, like, how do you do it, right? And honestly, you got to think. So just think about it. It's about 2 o'clock, a little after 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So from the time I woke up, which is around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, normally 4 o'clock, I normally leave my house at 5 if I'm going to visit a principal at a school or things like that. Keep in mind that since 7 o'clock this morning to the time I came here, I might have spoken to at least 3 or 4 principals.
Wow.
And sometimes it may be an hour-long conversation. Sometimes it's a 15-minute conversation. Sometimes it's a text. But the reality of it is that you maximize all the time that you can to keep in touch with folks. And then where am I right now? I'm in West Side High, and my brother Akbar Cook is here. So that's another one. And then I got another principal who's not far from here, Chancellor Avenue School, Principal Sakina Pitts, that I got to at least check. I got to go see her before I leave Newark, New Jersey as well.
Right.
So ideally what you want to do is just maximize those times. But when I do take it down, I take it down. So,
Okay.
I know, I'm detached from the world, and one is, I'm an avid golfer. I love to play golf. So
Okay.
during the milder weathers here in the East Coast, I don't mind playing a couple times a week. And during the winter, it gets a little crazy. So, sometimes we'll get on a plane and go somewhere a little bit warmer
Fancy.
to go play golf and things like that. But I usually, in addition to that, I'm into cigars. I'm into smoking a good cigar every now and then. So
That makes me very happy to hear. Do you have a favorite?
I'm always a Liga guy. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's Liga Privada 9 or 52 or Velvet Rat or those type of things. But I always tell people there's no such thing as a bad cigar. It's always it's always one better, and so it's very difficult. But in this stage of my life, there's no need to waste time with something that you don't find enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So you're smoking a cigar and it don't meet your expectation, get rid of it and get another one. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to make it work. And then obviously I enjoy spending time with with my family, my lovely wife and my kids who are just amazing. DJ who's 16, I told you earlier Mike is 30, and then my princess Kayla who's 8. So I definitely, just like I work hard, and I also play hard too.
Okay.
So it's important that people do the same.
I agree. So is that the same message that you give to the principals? Like, how important is self-care?
I mean, it's extremely important. It's something that's easier said than done, because when you're caring for as many people as principals care for on an ongoing basis, it's very difficult to find time for yourself. It's almost like you gotta steal a moment here or steal a moment there, whereas opposed to just simply, just allotting time throughout your day, if not your week, for it to be about you, right? And do so unapologetically. So it's tough. Explaining that to principals is something that I know is extremely challenging for them. When you're responsible for 300, 400, 500 lives and their families and the community and your family. Pressure. It's a lot of pressure for you to be great all the time. You don't have an off day as a principal. Everybody's expecting you to be great all the time. But the challenge in that is that, principals gain weight. Their health starts to deteriorate. They don't take care of themselves, and they're not going to the gym. They're not doing things for themselves. And so ultimately those things catch up with you. And, my advice to principals or anybody in particular is, how your clothes fit. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? You get up, you put your clothes on, it fits a little tight, then chances are you're not taking care of yourself. Chances are you got to say to yourself, you know what? If it's only a half an hour, if it's 35 minutes, however long, just do something to actually improve your health on some level.
And I like that, because even in the meetings, you make sure it's such a variety of people there. And I know Dr. Danie is always like, you have to get your exercise in, and she is adamant about it. And she's making sure that, everyone who's listening in or watching is make sure you get your exercise and take care of your body.
And Dr. Danie is one of those people who, again, she will always say, I'm not a principal, but she's part of the crew. She's part of OSG because, we share a very similar passion, which is young people, but we also share the passion of what's happening in our, our marginalized and underserved communities as well. So it's very, very important to me to bring a variety of people on and experts in their fields to help principals to deal with that. So a couple, not long ago, we had therapists come on and talk to people about the mental health aspect of the job, not just only physical health, but mental health. So principals, school leaders, educators in particular got to be very careful that they do not neglect themselves to a point where they wake up the next day or they don't wake up the next day.
That's right.
And I think if they wake up the next day in aches and pains and things like that, it's usually about something that we neglected over the past several weeks, months, if not years. So I'm a big proponent of taking care of yourself. And, I don't have a problem letting people know, like, today's just not that day.
This is why I love this platform, because there's literally something for everyone who's in
Absolutely.
attendance.
Absolutely.
And I don't know any other platform where people can say that.
Well, it's important to me for us to not just simply be a movement that, that people fling around lightly, which is, everybody has a movement now. Everybody has, everybody's entrepreneurs now. Everybody are leaders now. Everybody who can get on Instagram Live or Facebook Live or TikTok and profess to be great at what they do and call themselves experts, they do so freely. And, and no disrespect to any of them who do it, but I feel as if what I'm doing by this platform, OSG, and this family, is to be able to create an opportunity for young people to get a chance to see who we are. And it makes no sense to tell young people to look at what we do and try to emulate who we are, but we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not taking care of each other. So when you see, you have obviously been in the room with us, you feel that sense of family. You feel that sense of crew, like this is who we are. And that means a lot. That probably means more to me than anything else, because I want principals to reach out to each other. And you ain't got to tell me y'all spoke. I just want you all to build your own personal relationship with one another and be able to share ideas, share common practices and good practices and things like that. So I truly, I am blessed to be around such an amazing group of people all the time, because I'm around them all the time.
Yes, absolutely. And I was wondering, like, for you, how important authenticity is, because you are your brand. And
Well, look, I'm standing in front of you. I'm sitting in front of you with
very fresh today.
Yeah, fresh. Always G drip on. Got brand new Nike Air Max on my feet. You know what I'm saying? Yankee fitted. So authenticity is everything to me, right? I think there comes a point in time where you have to play the game. You have to dress, according to the environment in which you work. But then I think ultimately when you work towards being an entrepreneur and you start, running your own company and business and things like that, it gives you that flexibility to remain who you are at all times. Not that I'm not authentic when I put on a suit and shoes, but, I also want the flexibility of knowing that I can be myself as well in other levels too, which is by the way you see me dressed right now. So I embrace authenticity because I don't know how to be any other way. I don't have the passion for it. I don't have the patience for it. And I definitely do not have any true knowledge of how it is to be fake. I don't know how to do it. And, and I'm glad that God made me that way. I'm not telling people, live your life, do how you do you. I ain't got a problem with that. Me, I have a hard time not being myself. Okay. I just don't. I can't see me being that way. So authenticity is everything. But then being around other authentic people in OSG also rubs off.
Everyone feeds off of each other. And
yes.
It's like, you're doing great, I'm going to do great.
Yes.
It's just amazing to see and to be a part of it. I love it. It's just like, I'm like, wow, I feel so grateful just to even be in the room, you know.
And I always get the question, like, tell me about OSG. What's OSG? And things like that. And it's a very difficult question for me to answer every time. Because what it is for me may not be what it is for everybody else. There is a common thread of who we are and the authenticity and the love for young people and the love for our people. But in terms of what it means to every individual person, I think it means something a little different. And I think we all look for something to be associated with that coincides with our belief system. And when you get it, you find it, you actually feel like I found it now. And many of people have said that, like, I found my tribe, I found my crew, I found my family. And that's everything to me. But in terms of me, somebody said, well, do you tell me about OSG? Yeah, well, it's an educational organization, not-for-profit, that really, focus around really providing help and support to schools, school communities, as well as communities as a whole, to actually address the issues that are holding our children back from being successful. You ask me that tomorrow, I'm going to give you something a little different. But at the end of the day, if I had to point to one word that that makes up OSG and who we represent, it's about community.
Community. Okay.
And when we talk community, that's everything in it, including schools.
Wow. So in terms of not how I fit into the group, but I'm involved with the education system at this point strictly as a coach. I coach softball.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been.
Are you good? Were you good?
Oh yeah, I was good.
All right. Got any trophies?
I do, but I don't have them with me. But
okay.
yeah.
All right. So you won any championships?
No. See, we were always, I think, like Division I because of our basketball and football programs. So softball kind of fell into it. But once you start playing different schools from other places, like, oh, they really, really play. And it's like, okay.
How tall are you? 5'9", you said?
5'9", yeah.
So how many people were trying to push you into playing basketball?
All the time. I played it. It just wasn't for me. Like, I played it, but softball is my passion.
And I asked that question because I think, people normally look at you and try to draft you into your career, right? So they look at you, you're 5'9", and I think you should, or they may look at me dressed with a fitted hat, varsity jersey and sneakers and try to say, go work at the post office. So people are going to always try to fit you into what they believe you should do in life. And so I'm glad I was never that person that embraced that. And so hearing you talk about softball, I would have never assumed that you played softball. I mean, think about your podcast. But the reality of it is I remember when my mom, when my family were all involved in the post office. Like everybody worked at the post office. My grandfather, my father, my mother, my sister, my twin brother. We all worked at the post office. And for me, I wanted more. Like I wanted to do more for myself. I wanted to do more for my family. I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. I just wanted to do something a little different. And I remember my mom, who's always been extremely supportive, just had me think like, D, you sure you wanna, you wanna quit the post office? You got a son at home. You sure you wanna do that? And she was definitely somebody who again supports my decisions, but was a bit worried about whether or not that was the right decision. And I said, Mom, listen, I'm gonna make it work, but I ain't working in the post office. I'm not retiring here like everybody else. I don't want to have a ceiling of how much money I can make. I don't want to be able to have to go ask somebody, can I take a vacation and things like that. So as somebody who recognized that I had a bigger purpose than that, actually picking up the opportunity to go work at a school. I was making $18, $19 an hour at the post office. And I decided to quit that to go work at a school for $7 an hour, $7.37 to be exact. But I knew the moment I stepped foot in that school, I knew at that point I'd found my purpose. And I never once thought to myself that I wasn't going to make a career out of education. I never thought to myself at that point that I wasn't going to strive to be an entrepreneur and own other educational companies. I never thought about it not happening. So when I go back now and say to myself, what makes people do what they do? Oftentimes they're being coerced or having other people convince them of what they should be when they grow up or when they get older and what career in which they should pursue. I just ain't never been that person. And again, it could be because I had a son when I was 17 and I recognized that I wanted to do more than just, retire with a pension at the post office. Like I felt like I wanted to be an example of, risk-taking and entrepreneurship and business ownership and generational wealth and things like that. But I just can't say that I've ever had that thought in my head that I wasn't going to be successful and run successful business. I never thought that in my wildest dreams. So I'm glad to know that at 5'9", you didn't allow that to push you into something that you didn't enjoy just because other people thought that you were tall enough to go play basketball. Things like that.
They will try to push that narrative on you, like this is what you should be doing. So do you feel like the role of an educator is one to not force children, but what's the word I'm looking for? Encourage children to tap into their potential, whether it's being the next, educator or principal, or if it's just, I want to build this business? Do you feel like they're both equally important?
I think they're both equally important. I think it becomes challenging for educators to push children in that direction as much because of the high stakes testing that takes place across the country. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes it's about making sure children are prepared for exams and things like that. So it sometimes makes it very complicated for educators to actually do what they want to do, which is to educate children, to give them that blueprint to what life should be about when they finally graduate and things like that. So it's a little bit different now than it was when I was growing up, I think, where literally college and career readiness was very important. Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a sense, even if I didn't know what I wanted to do, I knew that I needed to go to college. I knew that I wanted to, be successful and things like that. And a lot of that stuff was, I think, inbred in me when, going to school with teachers who generally cared and stuff like that. But it's hard now. It's really hard because of the pressures that are put on school leaders and teachers to actually produce on these assessments and these evaluations of students. So do I think it's still important? Of course it is, but I'm telling you that there is a reason why it's not happening as much.
Wow. Okay. And as I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about my own experience, especially in the end of my high school years, and I'm like, nobody prepared me for life after high school. Not family members, not guidance counselors, anything, anyone. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, here's your diploma, like, here you go. And so when I'm in these meetings with you guys, and I'm like, wow, everything is so much different. Like, what a time we live in, because in my era, there was no support. Like, if you weren't the star athlete, then it's like you really didn't matter. So what school are you going to, or none of that stuff.
But Danie, I think it's important to recognize that there is a collective effort, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not exclusively the role and responsibility of the educator to do that. So if you're playing softball, I'm assuming your coach should have put as strong of an emphasis on you getting a quality education as the teacher did. Mm-hmm. Or if for those who are not in education or who are not into sports, let's say you were into gymnastics or arts or something else, the adults that are around you should also encourage you to go to school and get a quality education, get a great job and things like that. So the one thing I believe in my heart is that, that we're always given the opportunity to be around somebody who can influence and change our lives, right? So if our parents aren't there for us all the time, but you play sports, okay, that may be, the blessing in playing sports. It's because you got a coach who's able to say to you, Danie, listen, I know, things may be tough for you, but you see that effort that you put on the softball field, I need you to put that in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And if you respect that coach, you're going to go and work hard in that classroom. So it's really important that we look at education as a collective effort. Absolutely. On all the people that come into our lives. Very few instances can anybody say that they didn't have somebody who influenced them. The chances are unlikely that a person can really be successful if you don't have some form of influence, mm-hmm. some kind of mentorship, some kind of coaching. But I do think as we grow up, there are opportunities for other people to come into our lives and kind of maybe pick up the slack for where somebody else may have dropped the ball.
That's a really good point. And I was actually going to ask you from a coach's point of view. So our season we didn't get to have a season last year because of the pandemic. So now we're finally moving towards, okay, it's looking like it's going to happen this year. So I actually wanted to know, even from my own personal experience, or what I'm about to walk into with my own coaching season, is how do I do more for my kids who I don't get to see every day, and I don't get to communicate with them because of everything is virtual now. How do I apply myself and make sure that I'm doing, giving them what I can?
Well, I think communication is relative, right? Okay. I think when we think about communication, we have, most of us, if you're older than 5 years old, you kind of assume that the only way people communicate is through face-to-face connections,
Right.
and it's not true anymore. As a matter of fact, I mean, there are instances where, listen, I'm in my house, I may be in the basement, my wife is upstairs, and we shooting a text to each other. You know what I'm saying? So communication has evolved. And so when we talk about ways to build relationship with people, there's nothing wrong with communicating via text. There's nothing wrong with getting on a Zoom. There's nothing wrong with getting on a Google Meet. There's nothing wrong with speaking to people virtually. The fact of the matter is just speaking to them, just communicating with them. So you don't have to wait to see somebody to do it. I mean, mind you, most of the people on OSG, the meetup, most of us never met each other before.
I just found that out. I said, wow.
Most of us never met each other in person. And when we finally got a chance to meet each other in person is when it really clicked, like how dope we are and how amazingly close and tight that we are. But the reality of it, you got to think, for at least 6 months, we didn't see each other. 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, we hadn't seen each other ever.
Wow.
You know, just earlier this week, I came here to meet, I brought one of the principals who's never met Akbar. I brought her here to meet him in person, who he's known for at least 4 or 5 months. Wow. But in the process, I texted the other 3 who also work in Newark, who was also part of OSG, and I told them to come and pull up on her. You know what I'm saying? And so then afterwards, after we hung out with Ak and we walked the building, we went out to eat dinner. You know what I'm saying? Right here in Newark. Yeah. So it's weird how people who are connecting with one another via text or virtually anyway find a problem with doing it doing it in terms of work-related stuff.
Right. Okay.
Like, young people, they really don't want to talk to you on the phone.
No, they don't.
They really don't. Listen, they just want you to text them. So text them. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying that, listen, y'all, I'm getting on Zoom. I want y'all to get on. Let's talk, what have you. I want to bring somebody to come and talk and say hello to you. Something simple. Like, that's all it requires. But we got to get away from us trying to villainize virtual communication. That's where we are. That's where we're going. Pretty much that's where we're going to stay. But it's nothing new. It's nothing new. Like, literally, I mean, how many texts did you and I throw back and forth each other to get this meeting done and get this podcast done? So I think that we got to embrace it as such, that it's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, I do want to ask about the school in Tanzania. How did OSG get involved with that? Because that's big. That's like on the other side of the world. Am I exaggerating? But
Well, one of our crew members, Toya Carter, she runs a daycare center in Harlem, and she and another owner of a daycare center in Tanzania connected. I forgot how they actually got together, and then what would happen is in the initial earlier in OSG, even though it was, I think, almost an 8-hour difference, the young lady from Tanzania would come on the meetups with us, and and again we would talk, and we would always be inquisitive about what's going on with those kids and stuff like that. So it was just a conversation, like, talk to me about what's going on in Tanzania and what do the kids do and things like that. So she happened to have a piece of land right behind her daycare center.
Oh, wow.
And so, in speaking to her daughter, who happened to be, I think she was graduating high school, she loved basketball, but she would have to travel 30, 40 minutes to another nearby town to play basketball. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, especially you come to Newark, you come to New York, come to Newark, come to New Jersey, or you come to New York City, you go to other cities. There's a basketball court on almost every corner. So now she literally had to go to a completely different town to go play. So I was like, I mean, that's an easy problem to fix. Maybe we should kind of pull our resources together and see if we can actually build a basketball court in Tanzania. And within 3 months, I think it was sometime in the summer, we actually opened up our very first OSG basketball court in Tanzania, Africa.
That's dope.
Arusha, to be exact, Tanzania. And what was great about that experience is that, we got a chance to interview the kids. We had to interview some elected officials in Tanzania and what it meant to them. Those things we kind of take for granted, because we have it in abundance. the thing about that experience, which made it even much more of a, what made it so heartwarming for me was to see the children playing on a basketball court, and to see the OSG logo in the center of the court, and to see the OSG logo on the backboard. I felt like we did something, and it's only the beginning. And so whether we do it here or we do it abroad, kids are going to always be our focus. And when we think about giving other kids an opportunity to be great, why shouldn't we find a way to provide those resources for them? So the Tanzania project is, still, still probably one of our greatest accomplishments, because we get to see it. They still send us pictures. And then also too, they want to have and host their very first ever OSG basketball tournament for the young people. So we're going to kind of help out with the uniforms and stuff like that to make a big deal for them and stuff. So, I mean, it's just, that experience for all of us and for us to see is something that you, even as a person who's been with us, you're part of that. Like, every resource isn't about money. Sometimes it's about the encouragement. Sometimes it's about, you know what, D, that was dope what you did. Words of encouragement. That's all sometimes people may need for me. We're like, you know what? We did the right thing. So that's not just my basketball court. That's OSG. And anybody who's affiliated with OSG, that's part of your basketball court too. So in the event that you're in Arusha, Tanzania, you go stand, on that basketball court and take a picture. That's know that this is something that we built collectively.
It truly is a family. Absolutely. Yes. If I have to say so myself. And I'm just, like I said, grateful for it. So any way that I can assist with anything, any type of projects that are going on.
Yeah, but I mean, again, there are people who have been with us who took months to decide for themselves where they fit in, right? I'm perfectly fine with that. You show up, you bless, you walk away filled, I'm good, So it's important. Being on your podcast has really given me an opportunity to reflect as to the impact that OSG has made, not only in your life and in the life of others, but in my life. And every day that I get up, I don't always get the opportunity to embrace what this movement is and what this family is. I see it, but it's hard for me to totally embrace it because there's always another thing that needs to be done. And so whether it was the experience of building the basketball court in Tanzania, whether it's building the relationships amongst principals across the country, or whether or not we're just making an impact in the current communities that many of us work and live, it's very important now to think to myself as a reminder on a regular basis that what I'm doing is life-changing.
Absolutely.
And so when you've come on and you've been with us for as long as you have, I think that speaks volumes. So it means more to me to have this sit down with you and have this conversation with you, knowing that it has made this kind of impact on you. And just know, like, I feel now more than ever that this is how people grow, is that we inspire one another, we support one another, but at the same time, we always got to remember that we have people in our corner at all times. So even though you may think of it as, D, I'm happy to be part of OSG and things like that, I'm going to say, Danielle, I'm happy that you're part of OSG, because when it's all said and done, the fact that you thought enough about OSG and felt that this movement was something worth talking about, that speaks volumes to, why this means so much to me. So thank you for having me here with you on your podcast. And I mean, I'm hoping that this ain't the last time you invite me. I mean, I know I can come on people's shows sometimes and be a bit much and kind of take over, but that's just the tourist in me. But nonetheless, I'm appreciative for this opportunity, and I expect nothing but great things to come from this podcast for you. And again, you got a family in OSG that's going to help you to take this to the next level. So feel free to tap into us anytime you feel necessary.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is like so rewarding. It's making my day. And I have to say one thing, if I had to say, how do I leave OSG every single week just feeling inspired. And in the world that we live in right now, it's so hard to feel that way or to even stay in that space where you feel like you can be creative and, tap into the things that you enjoy. So I just want to say thank you for giving me that opportunity to, just to keep going and to be able to witness all of these amazing people and what they're doing and what you guys are doing. And it's fuel for me.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm, one bit of encouragement is to know that OSG had its first show as well, right? And you can look back almost a year later and where we are. And so you can kind of look at the evolution of where we started to where we are now, even down to the logo and where we are now. I'm just saying that if you keep plugging away at it and being consistent, this is what your podcast can look like in a year from now. And so, people can look at, whether it's the setting of the podcast and where we are, in a media center in Westside High.
Shout out to Westside.
Shout out to Westside. Just understand that this is only the beginning, and I'm going to expect you to keep growing and evolving and things like that. And I know that I'll be on this podcast again in the near future, and I know circumstances will be different, but I also know you'll be better at what you do.
Thank you.
And so, again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, and just so that you know, it took me over an hour to get here. It's going to take me over an hour to get home. So me coming to be part of your podcast was a big deal for me.
I appreciate
why I did that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So before we go, just tell everyone how they can find you guys, how they can support and things like that.
Yeah. Again, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube at the official OSG. That's where where you can find most things about us, including where to buy merchandise and stuff like that, such as hoodies, hats, face masks, and things like that. So I think that is, the best place to find us. But when people ask the question, how can they support? The reality of it is, however you can support. I don't care if it's a prayer. I don't care if it's you coming by to visit on the meetups every Thursday, or whether or not it's a call, or text, a DM saying, I see what you guys are doing. Those things mean a lot to me as well. And again, you can feel free to make donations as well to fund future projects and things like that as well. But, it's more about the support. So just drop us a word of encouragement when necessary, or when you feel that is deserving. So,
absolutely. Well, I want to say again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for just being who you are and just providing such.
So before we go though,
Okay.
So you had the opportunity to see me and to speak or to observe Dennis McKesey from OSG for at least 6-7 months in a Zoom conference. Is meeting me in person similar to what you see every Thursday that you? Am I that same dude?
You are. And it's so interesting. And that's why I was asking, this is really a platform where people are really authentic and they are who they say they are. And I appreciate that because, you meet people, sometimes they act a little Hollywood. They want to get all political but you really came in as yourself. And I appreciate that.
No doubt. I mean, like I said, I don't know how to be any other way. And I just hope that this podcast encourages other people as well, because I think sometimes we look at these things and we say to ourselves, if we get this many views, this many likes, that it's made a difference. No, what makes a difference is there's a young person who wants to do a podcast, who stumbles upon Tall Girl Tuesday podcast and felt like, wow, I can do that. Or let me reach out to Danielle and find out how I can do that and become successful as well. So that's what I want to leave you with is, don't look for the likes, the views, and all of those other things, because there's an algorithm that's connected to it. It's bigger than just people liking your post. Or there are going to be people who never even see your post.
Right.
But there are going to be people who do, who you may never have met before, similar to what this is, and just say, you know what, you've made an impact on my life. So just always be encouraged to know that people are watching you. People are watching how you're doing things. They're watching your authenticity. They're watching your consistency. So as long as you can do all of those things on a consistent basis, you've done your part.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your time again. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you guys for listening. And we'll